These call centers, however, do not operate in a vacuum. They draw upon an entire ecosystem of service providers who help facilitate each step of the process and get a cut of the profits. This next segment, we're going to be referring to the book of Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, and the chapter is going to be Behind the Scam. Now, I think a lot of us may really be used to seeing videos online where people expose the scammer and are able to kind of get this sense of justice and accountability for the crimes.
Alright, so I'm going to explain to you how I found these scammers.
But, and this is, to one degree or another, we feel that, we see these videos and we feel that the scammer finally has, to answer for his crimes. And this particular chapter, it highlights how there's more to this particular idea of scammers, and it is much more structurally and organizationally supported than we may be just accustomed to really thinking about. Many of us may be surprised to understand that there's actually a network in place that supports this trend that's going on that exists outside of, I'm thinking about one of the YouTube videos I've seen where, a hacker is looking through the security cameras at this group of scammers, but you guys should understand that there's a system outside of this group that supports and allows for these groups to take place. They don't have to be in that office space with these people, right? There's a quote directly from the book. These call centers, however, do not operate in a vacuum. They draw upon an entire ecosystem of service providers who help facilitate each step of the process and get a cut of the profits. Right? Now, this chapter goes over the steps involved with scamming and demonstrates how the scammers are supported by just various entities, right? And number one, they talk about how essentially the first step is catching the victims, and they rely on advertising companies to collect data. Okay. These companies, they design ads, and they can even purchase space on social media sites. Now, a lot of you guys need to understand that you shouldn't be relying on the Google Play Store to have any type of meaningful filter to select around just preventing bad actors. Okay. There's a book by Brian Tao, and it's called The Means of Control. This is, in this particular book, Brian Tao explains that the Google Play Store may actually be more concentrated or more filled with companies that are funded by people who want to mine data. And this includes the alphabet agencies or whatever. Also, Edward Snowden is he talked about how clicking on certain ads could lead to entities being able to collect data and even spy on you. And this is back in 2013. Okay. And that was, it was a very sophisticated system enough to where Edward Snowden mentions looking behind someone's shoulder and then coming to the realization that the screen that this person was looking at was them looking at someone else and their activity in real time. So this person was literally screen watching another person navigate through a computer. And that was that was in 2013. And I think those particular systems may be they may be more expensive in certain ways, and have to, you really, but you have to understand that technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. Capabilities are expanding. This is very much going to be a problem for agencies that are supposed to be responsible for regulating not doing their job, and that leading to more damaging attacks. And this is not going to be simply you clicking on the ad and now having your telephone number and your name populating a list that's given to scammers. It's going to be something more damaging. So you got to watch out and understand that it is the wild, wild west in the world of the unseen. That's one thing that I really got from Brian Tao's book. It is literally the wild, wild west, and there are entities that are well funded, able to pay politicians to shut up about it and do what they and continue doing what they want to do. In that relationship, you end up being the losing party. That's it. You're not on the winning side of that, because having it unregulated, keeping you guys unaware and uninformed, that's something that benefits them. So regardless if there's some, the CIA having my data is bad enough, right? But the idea here of also the people who just simply want to be more opportunistic and more straightforward with what they want to do and to extract money like a scammer, they get more power too. They get that power. That power translates directly to them in a lot of cases. And number two, we're talking about managing the scam, okay? A lot of people don't quite understand this idea. The advertising companies being able to get data is one thing, but having it populate that list, having a software that can keep track of all these things, and that may be acting, with the advertisement company or the advertisement front that's gaining all this data, those are softwares, right? We need to understand that those are people and engineers that benefit from that particular software. My guess is they probably charge some kind of monthly fee, because hey, I might as well charge the scammers. That makes sense. It's pretty crazy, but even that is crazy. But a lot of these programs, in this particular chapter, they talk about how they can present facades of legitimacy and have clients think that, for instance, they particularly mention being able to present a screen to a client that shows that their investment is going somewhere, and it's just it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but they are literally working to do this in a lot of cases. So we got to be careful about that too. Also, VoIP service providers. A lot of these guys, they get their phone number blocked, obviously, right? And a lot of them, they're using VoIP for a few different things, right? One, to circumvent the blockage, right? They can just switch numbers and use another way to contact different people if their numbers appears on some kind of block list. But also, the idea of VoIP being VoIP, those particular numbers, you can put in whatever area code you want for your number. So if you want to pretend like you are in the very state that the victim is in, then you can say, hey, look, this is the number that I want, and you can have that in your particular system. So if you it's a system, and the VoIP service providers, they may be, I don't view them as kind of more complicit than the software guys, but a lot of these the regulations that could come into play, they may target and hold these guys responsible when they do have a system of scammers that use their service, and this idea of also the office of the actual criminals, right? So we see the office space, but we don't understand that these guys are shell companies that own the space a lot of times. It's not just people that own, it's not just like blatant people that own the space. They're able to be comfortable and sit in their chairs and do these things and have a group of people with them like they're working a real job. And it's not like it's not one entity that can be traced to that particular office, and that's interesting, which is I'll mention that in the next step. But number 3 is getting the actual money itself. These scammers, they have preferred banking institutions that allow for them to not be traced, and these guys are going to try to a lot of times nudge victims into getting into certain institutions. Okay, so the idea here is that these institutions are in place and allow for these guys to do things and avoid accountability through them. And it's interesting because they're talking about really just a network of really unregulated service providers and shell companies that hide the real recipients for the money that comes through. But this whole system, right, when it comes down to just the idea of the systems around shell companies in general, and particular in the U.S., we're actually next up for I think it was we're before Switzerland in terms of allowing shady people to buy real estate and own real estate, right? We're in front of Switzerland. I forget what's the country in front of us, but I do remember we're in front of Switzerland in particular. But we have a system of shell companies that are allowing for, or that essentially buy real estate for shady people. Okay, there are people who there are entities that they'll be exposed in one place, but they won't be essentially wiped out. They won't be taken up by the root. Okay, and that's a very big problem. And it's a problem that's not even talked about in terms of with the U.S. But like I said, in terms of actually like having shady people, was it Switzerland? I forget where. There was some place that was just so surprising to see the U.S. ahead of us. I forget this actual list. Let me see. It is okay. So we're at the bottom of this particular list with like Australia and South Korea apparently. It's just basically a culture of just anti-money or anti-money laundering regulation, right? So we're not regulating these things, but we're very much on the forefront when it comes down to these guys being able to essentially hide money and wash money, and that's kind of that's something that we should really look at as just another mark on the record is us as normal people. We are for sale. We are for, like, as far as our politicians are concerned, we are for sale. That's not like, I don't care what kind of like facade that these guys put up or whatever. The evidence does look like they will do whatever their donors tell them to do, and this is without any regard for how we are impacted. a lot of cases, or at least up into a certain amount of cases, right? Because they have to care enough to stay in office in a lot of cases, but that game is becoming more and more apparent today, and I'm not sure if that's and it looks like a bad sign, honestly. And there are entities that are well funded, able to pay politicians to shut up about it.